Hey guys, in this video we're going to be looking at operations of functions. So starting out, you need to know that you can actually add, subtract, multiply, and divide functions. And there's a couple of different ways that you'll see these problems written out. One of them looks like this, and that reads, the way I read that is f plus g of 4. And all that I'm doing, all that means is I'm taking f of 4 plus g of 4. So I'm plugging in 4 in both equations and adding the answers together. So in order to find f of 4, I have to plug in 4 for x. So I have to plug in 3 times 4 minus 7, which is 12 minus 7, or 5. And then in the other one, I have to do 13 minus 2 times 4, which is 13 minus 8, which also happens to be 5. And 5 plus 5 is 10. So sometimes it'll look like the f plus g of 4. Sometimes your problem will say f of 4 plus g of 4. They mean the same thing. So we're going to do some examples. Number 1 says find f of negative 2 plus g of negative 2. So I'm going to plug in negative 2 to both functions separately and then add the answers together. So f of negative 2, I'm going to replace the x with negative 2. And make sure you put those in parentheses. So when I plug that in, if you plug it in correctly, you get negative 2. Sometimes with those negatives, it gets a little confusing. And then I'm going to find g of negative 2, which is just negative 2 plus 7, which is 5. So my problem said to add them together. Negative 2 plus 5 is 3. And that is my final answer. Number 2, this is the other way that you'll see these problems written. That just means f of 8 minus g of 8. So I'm going to find f of 8 first. I didn't need that last parenthesis. And we get 108. And then I'm going to find g of 8. Eight plus 7 is 15. And remember, your problem was a subtraction problem. So we take 108 and we subtract 15. 108 minus 15 equals 93. Number 3, f of negative 1 times g of negative 1. So we're going to find our answers separately. So f of negative 1 If you plug that in the calculator, you get -9. And g of -1 is -1 plus 7, which is 6. And my problem was a multiplication problem, so I'm going to do -9 times 6, which is -54. Number 4, this one is division, so it's f of 5 divided by g of 5. So we're going to plug in 5 for both equations. F of 5 oops, I forgot my squared. Let me get 33. G of 5 would be 5 plus 7, which is 12. And 33 divided by 12 is 2.75. All right, numbers 5 and 6, very similar, so I want you to pause the video and try 5 and 6, and then when you get them finished, then play it so you can see if you got the same answers. Number 5 actually has the same numbers. It's very similar to number 2, but the F and the G are switched. So G of 8, if I look back at number 2, I have found that G of 8 is 15, and F of 8 was 108. And I'm going to do 15 minus 108, which is -93. Number 6, haven't done 4 yet, so F of 4 oops, not 5. We get 16. And G of 4 is 11. And we're going to do 16 times 11, which is 176, I think. Yep, 176. All right, we have a few more examples, and these are called composition of functions. And this is where I have to find the answer from one function first, and then I use that answer in the other function. So unlike the previous examples, we don't use the same number for both functions. You know, we use one, and then it changes for the other function. So there's 2 ways that you'll see these written. The first one is very easily confused with multiplication because sometimes a dot represents multiplication. So you'll usually see it written like this, where one of them is kind of on the inside of the other. And the one that's on the inside, you do first. So you always do the inside, get an answer, and then you use that answer. And so I'll show you in an example. So number 7 says g of h of 2. I'm not plugging in 2 for both g and h. We start with the one that's on the inside. So the first thing that I have to do is I have to plug in 2 for h, or in the function of h. So that would be 5 times 2 minus 3, which is 7. 5 times 2 is 10, minus 3 is 7. And then I don't do g of 2, I do g of 7. So I take that 7 from my previous answer, and that's what I use in the g function. So g of 7 would be 7 minus 1, which is 6. And so my final answer is 6. All right, number 8. So remember, with composition of functions, you always start on the inside. So notice how that f of negative 2 is inside. So I'm going to do that one first. So f of negative 2. I'm going to put my negative 2 in parentheses. Negative 2 cubed plus 8. And that is 0. So I'm going to take that 0 now and plug it in to my h function. So I'm going to find h of 0. 5 times 0 minus 3, because my h up here at the top is 5x minus 3. And that is negative 3. And negative 3 is your answer. With composition of functions, you don't take that 0 and add it to the negative 3 or multiply it or divide. That 0, we use that in the h function. So when you're doing composition, so composition is when you have one inside of the other, that last number you get is your answer. Okay. Number 9. F of h of 0. This is the other way, remember, that I showed you. You could write it. I don't like it this way. So we say f of h of 0. So this O is kind of like of. F of h of 0. So we do the inside first. So h of 0, which just so happens to be what we just did, which would be 5 times 0 minus 3. That's negative 3. And now I have to take that negative 3 and I'm going to use it in the f function. So we have negative 3 cubed plus 8. And that's negative 19, and that is the answer. All right, G, I'm going to read this, G of f of negative 3. So the f is the one that's on the inside. So we're going to do that first. F of negative 3. Negative 3 cubed plus 8. We just found that one, and it's negative 19. And so I'm going to take that negative 19 and use it in the g function. And g is x minus 1, so negative 19 minus 1 is negative 20. Oh, mercy. Look here. We have 3 letters this time. So instead of just doing 2 functions, we have to do 3 functions. We still work inside out, so we still start with the h of 1. We're going to plug 1 in for h. 5x minus 3. So 5 times 1 minus 3. That's 2. Then I'm going to move to the next one. I'm working inside out. So g would be the next one inside. So g of 2. That would be 2 minus 1, which is 1. So I started with h. Then I went to g. Now I'm going to go to f. F, and I'm using 1. F of 1, because that was the answer from my last problem that I did. F of 1 would be 1 cubed plus 8, which is 9. So notice how each time my answer, I used that in the next problem. That's what composition of functions is. All right, last one. Notice we still are using our middle number is 1, but our letters are rearranged. So I'm going to start with the inside. So I'm going to do f of 1. That's 1 cubed plus 8, which is 9. So I started with f. Then I'm going to move to g. G of 9, because I'm using my answer. 9 minus 1 is 8. Let me make sure I had the right. I cannot remember yet. That's all right. 9 minus 1 is 8, and then I'm going to use that answer in h. H of 8 is 5 times 8. I forgot. 5 times 8 minus 3, which is 37. So when you're doing these problems, you really have to pay attention to what it's telling you. You know, is it asking you to add? Do you see a plus sign? Do you see a minus? If you see plus, minus, multiply, or divide, those aren't composition. Those are you find 2 separate answers and you either add them, subtract them, multiply them, or divide them. But if one is inside the other, or you see that O, that is composition. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a great day.